How do you maintain profitability with Google Ads for your e-commerce brand long term? This is a question I've had for a very long time. And it's really not until recently when I spent over 7 figures combined with Google Ads alone before I really started to understand the main secrets and the strategy behind staying profitable long term with Google. But before we discuss that exact strategy of how to maintain profitability with Google Ads, let's first understand all of the moving parts that go into even making the results you get from Google or just about any advertising platform out there profitable. So some of the main moving parts of this profitability idea is determined based on the backend optimizations, based on the metrics and KPI analysis of how your campaigns are doing, such as through the conversion rate, such as through the average order value, or maybe even the CTR. It's also determined on the actual ad strategy which you implement on your Google Ads account. Is determined on the A/B testing you do, how you do it, the quality of this A/B testing, and also determined by things like product additions, and finally the level and quality of scale you are doing. All of these things I mentioned directly impact your ability to be profitable with Google Ads. But let's now go over each one of these step by step to really understand how it works. So let's start off with backend optimizations. The first thing I always say, because this is the reality, it does not matter right here what you do on the Google Ads dashboard side of things. I mean, this e-commerce brand that is currently under my Google Ads agency, Your Marketing, which if you're currently doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling to the next level. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can possibly work together and make that happen. But this level of profitability right here did not directly come from just the campaigns we have running here, not at all. In fact, the level of profitability we're able to achieve here all started in the back end with the backend optimizations we did. This includes the Google Merchant Center. I mean, this is an account I covered in my last video where we went over the best practices for Google Ads. This account here recently was not following best practices. As a result, quality of the Google Merchant Center went down, the ad cost went up, so on and so forth. But that's exactly what happens when you are not focused on the back-end optimizations. Back-end optimizations include things like the Google Merchant Center feed, how many errors you have here, your overall SEO in terms of your titles, in terms of your description, how your landing page even looks. All of these things play a huge role in determining what kind of profitability you get. So the best kind of strategy to this is to make sure every single setting that Google lets you choose, or every single thing Google lets you do, you take advantage of and do it. So if we talk about the Merchant Center, that means applying for all of the programs here, such as the Shopping Experience Scorecard program, having discounts in place, having the Google Shopping reviews. That's that for the Merchant Center side of things. When it comes to the landing pages, making sure your landing page is optimized based on what your audience wants. So if we look at this website right here, it's in the 3D printer niche. Of course, that's my favorite example. If you're an OG follower, you know that. But it's not just about having a landing page that's optimized. It's about having a landing page that people in your niche want to see, because this ultimately determines a lot of different factors of profitability, such as are people taking action on your website or not, or are people just bouncing off of your website or not. These things are very important and determine the overall quality of your profitability. But in terms of backend optimization, making sure you have a very optimized page, and this page right here, it may not be optimized for, say, the beauty niche or maybe the fashion niche, but it is perfectly optimized for the 3D printer niche, because the people in this niche want to see something more on the professional side. They're more interested in learning about the details of the product, what it can do for them, its specifications. They're more interested in simple photos rather than these amazing lifestyle photos. They're more interested in reading about the reviews. All these things are what the people in this niche want to see, and Prusa Research here did a perfect job of that, which is why they're one of the brands which are completely crushing it with Google Ads. But this is sort of the first step of profitability, making sure you have a backend endpoint. This includes Google Merchant Center promotions and all of that stuff. This includes your landing pages, your SEO for titles, your descriptions, your images, all of that stuff, which ultimately impacts how your Google Ads campaigns perform. But that's not enough. After you have set up all of your backend foundations, including your email flows, all of that stuff, then the next thing is actually the metrics and KPI analysis. Now, I've only mentioned 3 different metrics. If you remember earlier, I mentioned CVR, which is conversion rate. I mentioned the average order value, and I mentioned CTR, the click-through rate. The first reason why I mentioned conversion rate first is because, again, the backend optimizations you do via the landing pages and all of the other things directly impact your conversion rates right here. If it's a low conversion rate, you're gonna have a hard time scaling. It's simple as that. And you're gonna also have a hard time getting more sales, which means you're not gonna be as profitable as you would with higher conversion rates. So first things first, you need to have a decent conversion rate. Now this depends entirely on your niche. If you're a high ticket store, naturally you're gonna have very low conversion rates. For example, this e-commerce brand has lower conversion rates because the products are more higher ticket. This is a furniture e-commerce brand. But if it was more on the lower AOV range, I would expect 2 to 5% conversion rates. That's the first thing you need to focus on with profitability. The second thing, the average order value. It's not the CTR, it's not the CPC, it's average order value. And that's because the higher your average order value is, naturally you're gonna be able to spend more to get that same exact sale. So let's say, for example, our average order value here is $5,000. If my AOV is $5,000, suddenly this 133 pound per conversion number does not seem too big anymore. Why? It's because I have an high average order value. If my average order value was on the lower end, instead of 5,000, if it was 50 pounds, well, in this case, I would be pretty unprofitable right here. So everything is basically determined on the average order value. This is the number one thing you need to be focusing on in the back end. And the best strategy to do this is just via upsells, downsells, all of those things, making sure you have higher conversion rates, making sure your back end is optimized, your landing page fits your ideal audience. That's why all of these things kind of play onto the level of profitability you get to achieve long term. But the third thing that is important when it comes to profitability is, of course, the CTRs. I mean, if you have a low CTR, it is going to be pretty difficult for you to get decent amount of people onto your website. And if you're not getting decent amount of people on your website, well, in that case, you're just going to have lower sales in general. So having a higher CTR is really one of the keys, but that's not the only thing. You need to combine that with higher conversion rates, followed by a high AOV. But this then brings us into the ad strategy itself, because ultimately, if you have the wrong ad strategy, you're not going to be profitable long-term, period. So when it comes to the ad strategy, the best kind of strategies I'm really kind of finding with e-commerce brands, regardless of the niche, are the segregated ad copies. When I say segregated, I mean separated by something in common. It could be a commonality in terms of the collection. Like for example, with this e-commerce brand, this first Performance Max campaign here was fully based on an individual collection. And those products were doing well, which is why we decided to launch a whole PMax just for that specific collection. But this kind of segregation does not have to be just on collections. It could also be based on certain KPIs, like a winners campaign only with all winning products, best-selling products in one. It could just be a campaign with losing products in there. It could be a campaign based on all cost of goods. So if every single product in a certain category for your brand has cost of goods of $30, you could put that inside of one PMax campaign. But regardless of what you do, the best strategy and approach here with shopping and search is to have a segregated approach. This is what kind of leads to a good level of profitability. I mean, not just with this e-commerce brand, when your overall scale rises. So if we go on over to this other e-commerce brand, for example, where we have multiple different campaigns running at any given time. This is also another account under my Google Ads agency or marketing. We can see that in total, if we kind of make this only enabled campaigns, right now there are only about 19 different campaigns which are enabled. But this is because we have segregated each given collection or each given specific product into its own campaign due to certain characteristics of that product, maybe KPIs, maybe collections, so on and so forth. And because of that, we're really able to scale each campaign differently, and we're able to get different results per campaign. So we can kind of focus differently on this campaign that's getting a 10x ROAS compared to this one getting a 6x ROAS compared to this one getting a 3x ROAS. That's one of the biggest reasons why we're able to remain profitable with Google Ads for such a long time, simply because, again, we don't just jumble everything up together inside of one individual campaign, because that's too risky. If that specific campaign starts to underperform because of one major product that was pulling its weight for a long time, then the entire campaign goes to ruins, which is what we don't want. So a segregated approach in terms of the ad strategy really helps you maintain that profitability. And when you combine that with focusing on the landing page experience with proper conversion rates, improving the AOVs, and of course the back end, that's really when you're able to maintain profitability with Google Ads and just anything in general long term. But this brings us to the next one, which is A/B testing, because these results right here, this conversion rate, this level of ROAS right here, we would not have been able to achieve if it were not for proper A/B testing. And believe it or not, proper A/B testing is one of the most integral parts of having profitability with Google Ads. But the way to do it is, first of all, one at a time. So if you, for example, A/B test something on the landing page, like the color of your buy button, you need to only be testing that at any given time for a set period of time. So I recommend you test something for 5 to 7 days, no more than 5 to 7 days, because that's ample amount of data coming in to understand if this change is good enough or not. But this change directly helps you improve your AOV, directly helps you improve your conversion rates, which then of course is gonna impact your ad strategy and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's super important for you to be A/B testing on a consistent basis. But 99% of e-commerce store owners stop here on the landing page. That's the biggest mistake you can do, because A/B testing now can expand onto more things than just your landing pages. I mean, within your Google Ads dashboard itself, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a whole experiment section which lets you literally experiment between different shopping campaigns, between different bidding strategies, between different search campaigns, ad copies. The list is endless. So you need to be A/B testing these things. You need to be really understanding what's working the best for your ad account, because getting to this level of scale where you have 12 different campaigns, 19 different campaigns at any given time, it does require A/B testing. It requires that you know exactly what works for your ad account and what doesn't. But this kind of brings us to the second to the last point when it comes to profitability with Google Ads, and that's product additions or product sourcing. Now, when it comes to Google Ads, product sourcing should be very strategic. This e-commerce brand right here, which is a fashion e-commerce brand, if we go right inside one of the Performance Max campaigns, go on over to products, what I want to show you is the number of products that are running within this e-commerce brand. And in total, there's 19,677 different SKUs or products running at this moment within this e-commerce brand. And the important thing is not the 19,000 number. It's simply the variety of different products that is available within this e-commerce brand. And the main reason why this is so beneficial long-term with Google and with profitability is because when you have more options to scale to, now your Google Ads campaigns don't have to focus on making that one single product you sell on your brand work, even if it's not really showing any good signs. And this removes a lot of the stress and a lot of the external factors of having a failed e-commerce brand, because now if one product doesn't work, that's completely fine, because you have 19,676 other products where you can go out and actually give them a try. And in most cases, at least one of them should be a winning product, unless of course you did no research in adding these products to your store and nobody's actually searching for them. But with Google Ads, product search volume is very important, and the more products you have, the easier it becomes to scale the brand. And it's no surprise this brand right here, we're able to scale to about $300,000 to $500,000 every single month. But product additions, product sourcing, super important. Once you find a best-selling product or a best-selling collection, you need to be adding on to get more and more bestsellers similar to what's working. But this brings us to the final kind of topic when it comes to being profitable with Google Ads long-term, and that's with scaling. Now, scaling is one of these sections where 99% of e-commerce brands become unprofitable, and it's kind of expected. I mean, you're increasing budgets very rapidly, you're improving your orders, you're reaching more and bigger audiences. Because of that, obviously, you're gonna have lower people who actually wanna buy from you just because you're reaching a bigger audience. But when it comes to scaling properly, you need to ensure that your strategies are aligned with your goals. And if one of your goals is to remain profitable with Google Ads while scaling, you need to ensure that you take scaling in different phases. So phase one is where you scale, but you scale so aggressively that your ROAS starts to dip. So let's say, for example, your break-even ROAS is a 2x and you're scaling to a 4x and a 5x. But as you start to increase your budgets rapidly, you will notice that that ROAS drops from a 4x or a 5x to a 3x, maybe to a 2.5x. That's the first phase. Once it drops to a level where you're just uncomfortable with wanting to scale your revenue further because of that drop, then you scale down or keep it steady and stagnant while you work on the ROAS. And the main goal here is to improve that ROAS up above the levels where you're comfortable with the overall profits coming in. But this is like an ongoing cycle between phase one and phase two all over again for an unlimited period of time as long as you continue to scale your brand. But when it comes to scaling, you definitely want to take things in phases. You don't want to be too aggressive because this is one of the easiest time periods to destroy your overall profitability and your ROAS. But if you're doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your e-commerce brand to the next level. Go onto my website at euromarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can possibly work together and make that happen. But I do want you to watch this video right here on how to rank #1 with Google Shopping, because once you're profitable with Google Ads, you will definitely want to be ranking up in terms of Google Shopping to make sure your revenue does not suffer.